Hey guys, welcome back to another Trick Tip Tuesday, and for today's tip I'm going to be talking about the different die selections that we have available for Baileigh benders and what the difference between them is. So on these Baileigh machines there's two different main dies that are available even within the same radius of bend and the same size of material. So what I mean by that is you can have a die that is their standard or elliptical shape die, and then they have a true radius die. So on the standard die, the cut for the relief for the tube that's going to be in the die for where the tube is actually going to bend through there, that cut is cut into more of an elliptical shape. It's not perfectly round to match the shape of the tubing. And not only is it not perfectly round, it is slightly narrower than the OD of the tubing. On the true radius die, it's cut to the exact radius of the tubing you're trying to bend. So if you have an 1.5 inch tubing that you're trying to bend, you have an 1.5 inch true radius die, it's going to have an 1.5 inch cut in the die itself. Whereas it's going to be slightly smaller on that elliptical die. So to explain the difference on those and why you may need one or the other, we're going to draw a circle here to represent our tubing size. And on a standard elliptical die, this is going to be a little bit more dramatic shape just to get the point across, but let's say on a standard die, this die is going to be cut in a little bit of a elliptical egg type shape. So let's just say it's going to come out this way, go that way. So when you hold your tubing up to that die, it's not going to sit all the way down in the die. And the reason for that is that depending on the radius, how tight the radius is that you're trying to bend or how thin a material you're trying to bend, the little bit of pinch or elliptical cut in the die is actually going to squeeze as you start bending, and it puts pressure on the tubing. It's going to squeeze the tubing down height-wise this way, and actually at the end of your bend, it's going to have, your tubing is going to have a slight kind of elliptical egg shape to it. Now that's obviously a hand drawing sketch. But just to make you understand, it's going to squeeze that tube down height-wise this way in order to help maintain the integrity of the tubing throughout the bend. So like I said, that's going to depend on how tight of radius you're bending and the wall thickness of the material that you're trying to bend. So if you're used to, let's say you're stepping up to one of these Baileigh machines, you want the programmable features, you want to be able to do a bend in one shot, say 180 degrees without letting off the pedal, that sort of thing. And you have your options as far as these dies. You may, if you're used to, let's say, a Pro Tools bender, those dies are all cut as a true radius. So that's the kind of bend you're going to be used to. And the difference on a true radius is, we're going to redraw this here. So the difference on a true radius is the relief cut in the true radius is going to be cut to the same radius, obviously deeper on the die, but to where your tubing sits all the way in the die. That way, as you're bending, it's going to keep the shape of the tubing here on this side that's inside that die. It's going to keep it to the size height-wise. It's not going to pinch it down like the standard elliptical die does. So by the time you get to the end of your bend, you're going to end up with a little bit of D shape in the tube. So when you're done, the tube is going to be a little bit of a flatter edge on the outside, and let's say a little bit more of a rounder radius on the inside. So it's going to be a little bit flattened, and the reason it does that, and that's also going to be based on the wall thickness of the material, the tightness of the radius that you're bending. But the reason it does that obviously is because it's maintaining the size of the tubing on the inside, and the tubing has to give somewhere. It's got to stretch, it's got to move, so it's stretching all that material on the outside of the die as it bends around it, this way. It's got to stretch that material out, so as it stretches it and maintains that inner shape, it's got to pull from somewhere. So it's stretching the outside edge of the material, which then in turn can lead to a slight bit of D shape in your tubing. And really, you know, it's kind of up to what you're doing as far as what die is going to be right for you. The follower dies that they have available, there's going to be some different, there's going to be your standard follower dies, which is going to be cut to the size of your tubing, or there's a revised follower die, which is going to allow you to maybe have not quite as much pinch on a standard elliptical die, or it's just going to give you a little more relief to change up the shape of that a little bit. Because on a standard elliptical die with a standard follower die, it's going to be a little more oval, egg-shaped throughout the bend. If you bend a 90 degree and you cut it at 45 to look at the shape of the tubing, on a standard elliptical die, it's going to end up being a little more kind of egg-shaped. On a revised elliptical die, it's going to be slightly more, it's going to be a little bit pinched on the inside for a little egg shape here, but then it's going to be a little bit flatter on the back end. And then on a true radius die, like I said, you're going to be a little bit more true to the radius of the tubing, and then it's going to end up being slightly more D-shaped on the outside. So like I said, it all depends on the wall thickness of your material, how tight of bend you're trying to achieve, as you know, to determine what type of die you need. And some of that is also personal preference on what you like to see as far as the shape of your tubing throughout the bend. So we'll show some images of the different profiles of the material throughout the bend that's been cut through, so you can see the difference between the standard elliptical, the elliptical with the revised follower die, and the true radius die. So for help determining maybe what die you might be looking for and understanding the difference between those, if you have any more questions, give us a call or visit our website at Trick-Tools.com, and we'll have more information for you then. So thanks for watching this week's trick tip. Email us your tips, ideas at tips@Trick-Tools.com, and we'll see if we can include them in these videos. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.